Let me tell you something right now. Gen Z would not survive the childhood we had. Not for a year, not for a month, not for a weekend. Some of them wouldn't make it past breakfast. Because the world we grew up in was completely different. It was tougher, louder, stricter, and far less interested in our feelings. We were raised by mothers who loved us deeply, fed us properly, protected us fiercely, and frightened us so badly that even today, as grown adults, some of us still feel nervous when we hear our full name said in the wrong tone. And I know some people today like to romanticize the old days. They picture sunshine, homemade food, children playing outside, neighbors smiling, and everybody living some peaceful, simple life. Yes, that happened. But let's not lie. There was also fear, real fear. Not the kind Gen Z talks about when the Wi-Fi stops working or their phone battery drops to 4% and suddenly it's a national emergency. I'm talking about the kind of fear that entered your body the second your mother called your name from another room, and you couldn't quite tell from her voice whether she needed help or whether your life as you knew it had just come to an end. That was our childhood. We were not raised by parenting books, calm voices, reward charts, and emotional check-ins. We were raised by women who could stir a pot, fold laundry, listen to neighborhood gossip, watch three children at once, and still detect from 50 meters away that you were outside doing something stupid. And they always knew. That is one thing I want modern generations to understand. Our mothers always knew. You could be outside acting innocent, pretending nothing happened, and still walk back into the house only to find your mother standing there, already informed, already disappointed, and already 3 steps ahead of your weak little alibi. I don't know how they did it. I still don't. To this day, I believe all mothers from that generation were part of some secret intelligence agency. Information traveled faster between them than it travels now online. You could sneeze in the street and somehow your mother would know who you were with, why you were there, what foolishness you were considering, and what expression was on your face while you were doing it. Gen Z today talks about privacy. Privacy? We grew up in neighborhoods where every curtain was half open and every woman over 40 had direct access to breaking news. There was no privacy. There was only evidence. And you know what's funny? We accepted it. We lived in it. That was normal life. If you misbehaved in public, it wasn't just your mother you had to worry about. It was the entire street. Any neighbor could correct you. Any aunt could report you. Any old lady sitting outside could look at you in such a way that you immediately remembered you belonged to a family and were in the process of embarrassing them. Today, a child acts up in public and people say, let's not shame them. Back then, shame was part of the educational system. You learned fast, very fast. And at the center of it all was your mother. Now let me be clear. Our mothers were not cruel women. They were not bad women. They were strong women, overworked women, practical women. Women who had too much to do and no time to negotiate with a child who suddenly wanted to explain why he technically wasn't responsible for breaking the glass. They didn't care about technically. They cared about results. If something was broken, if the floor was dirty, if you answered back, if you stayed outside too long, if you embarrassed the family, if you wasted food, if you made noise when guests were there, if you slammed the door, if you touched something you were told not to touch, if you came home dirty after being sent out clean, there would be consequences. And the thing Gen Z will never understand is that our mothers didn't need to scream all day to control the house. Sometimes all it took was one look. One look. That look could stop your heart more effectively than a medical procedure. You could be laughing 1 second, acting smart in front of cousins, showing off, talking too much, feeling bold. Then your mother looked at you. And suddenly you became a quiet believer in discipline. Modern children need long explanations. We needed eye contact. That was enough. One raised eyebrow could shut down an entire personality. And don't even get me started on the full name call. Because if your mother used your full name, not your nickname, not the sweet family version, but the full government-registered legal name, it was over. That was not a conversation. That was a summons. That was your soul being invited to stand trial. Even now, as adults, many of us still react to that tone. You can be 40, 50, 60 years old, paying taxes, raising grandchildren, dealing with real life, and if an older woman says your full name in that exact sharp voice, your body still remembers. That kind of fear doesn't leave. It retires maybe, but it never fully dies. And Gen Z? Please. Gen Z would schedule therapy after one afternoon in our house. They'd need hydration, reassurance, a support group, and somebody to validate that their mother created an unsafe emotional environment by telling them to stop crying and come peel potatoes. But for us, that was just a normal day. You woke up, you made your bed, you washed your face, you got dressed, and before you could even fully understand your own existence, somebody had already handed you a chore. There was always something to do. Sweep this, carry that, go buy bread, take this to your aunt, watch your younger sibling, peel these potatoes, don't touch that, come back immediately, and if I call you once, you answer. That was the soundtrack of childhood. No discussions, no negotiations, no, I'm not in the mood today. Mood? We didn't have the luxury of a mood. Children today are exhausted from notifications. We were exhausted from actual instructions. And the funniest part is that our mothers could issue commands while doing 6 other things at once. They did not need to stop and focus on us like modern managers in a leadership seminar. They could be cooking, cleaning, arguing with someone from the doorway, adjusting the curtain, and still notice that you had moved one object in the wrong way somewhere behind them. It was supernatural. I truly believe mothers back then had eyes in the back of their heads, and maybe on the sides too, because there was no sneaking, not real sneaking. You thought you were clever. You thought you were quiet. You thought you got away with it. You didn't. You were just being allowed a few extra minutes before justice arrived. And justice always arrived, usually in slippers. That's another thing modern generations missed. The slipper had status. The slipper was not just footwear, it was a symbol, a warning, an extension of law and order. You saw your mother take off a slipper, and suddenly your whole attitude changed. Peace negotiations began immediately. Nobody wanted the situation to escalate to slipper level. Gen Z today gets corrected with gentle vocabulary and color-coded emotion charts. We got that look, that tone, that silence, that slipper on standby, and somehow we still found a way to laugh, eat dinner, and continue living. That generation of mothers had range. They could scare you half to death and then 10 minutes later ask if you were hungry. And that was the confusing part, because the love was always there. It just wasn't wrapped in soft language. They didn't always say, "I'm proud of you, sweetheart." Sometimes they said, "Eat." Sometimes they said, "Put on a sweater." Sometimes they said, "Take food with you." Sometimes they acted annoyed while giving you the biggest piece of meat. That was love in our house. Not poetic love, not Instagram love, not let's all share our feelings love. Practical love, hard love, loud love. The kind of love that made sure you were fed, clean, disciplined, respectful, and home before dark, even if it frightened you a little in the process. And honestly, looking back now, I think that's why Gen Z would struggle so badly with the world we came from, because that world did not adjust itself around children. Children had to adjust themselves to the world. That was the difference. We were expected to toughen up, learn quickly, listen the first time, and understand that adults were not here to entertain us. And before anyone says, "Well, that sounds harsh," let me remind you, we survived it. Not only did we survive it, we developed reflexes that still work better than modern technology. To this day, if I hear a pan lid slam too hard in the kitchen, part of me still thinks somebody's disappointed in me. That is not weakness. That is training. Stay calm, stay true, God bless. And if this brought back a few memories, subscribe and join me for more stories from the good old days.